Thanks, Amy, and very happy to be part of the Active Knox group, and great to see so many people here, and I understand great attendance at some of Ben's presentations yesterday, so they've worked them out well. So I want to thank Amy and thank the Chamber for hosting us here today, and for all of you for taking the time to be here. As already mentioned, Active Knox, we helped put on the speaker series, and so would love recommendations in the future of other speakers you'd like to see, and also want to thank the Tennessee Department of Health for helping co-sponsor provide the funding for the speakers to come here. I'd also like to welcome a lot of our elected officials from Knoxville. I think we have Marshall Stayers here with us from City Council, and Stephanie Welch. Anyone else from City Council? There's Stephanie. Thank you for coming. Town of Farragut Board of Aldermen, we have Ron Pinchuk and Ron Williams. Thank you for being here. Blount County, Ron French. So thank you all for being here. Did I miss anybody? County Commissioners. Did we have any? Evelyn. Thank you. Right in front of me. So I couldn't miss anybody else, but wanted to thank all of you for being here and all that you do to help as we move forward and looking at development in Knoxville, Knox County, and the entire region. So thank you for being here. And it is my privilege to welcome Ben Crenshaw here to Knoxville and to speak to us today. Ben's Senior Vice President over Design at Southern Land Company. In that role, he oversees the design and engineering team, and he's accumulated vast experience in creating the mixed-use communities and with affordable housing components that they'll focus on today. He brings about 20 years of experience in this position, including his work being recognized by the American Society of Landscape Architects and the Urban Land Institute. He's certified by the Council of Landscape Architectural Registration Board and is registered in Tennessee, Texas, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Colorado. Ben holds a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture and a Bachelor of Science in Landscape Contracting, both from Mississippi State University. So please join me in welcoming Ben Crenshaw.
Thank you, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting. I want to really thank Ellen and all of her support for getting me around this week. And all the hospitality that everybody has shown here this week. Had some free time over the last couple of days, and I'm staying in downtown, had the chance to walk around, see all the great things that are happening in downtown, including this great little farmer's market here today. Everything that's happening downtown, really encouraging about what's going on in Knoxville and sort of the future of what could be in Knoxville. So the best way I can tell you about our experience is just kind of really go through who we are, what our experience has been, how we evaluate a project, the viability of a project, and where we want to participate in a community. And we had a lot of good discussion. This is the fourth presentation we've been able to do in the last couple of days. I had a great discussion, both from financial viability side, community benefits side, and really looking forward to your questions. I will go through this relatively quickly, and we've got I've got a bunch of slides, some representative projects, and then a couple of little videos to help you understand how we develop projects. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on how this might be able to be applied to Knoxville. So let's see if this thing works from this angle. Again, Southern Land Company was started in Chattanooga a little over 30 years ago by a man named Tim Downey. He is still our owner and really chief visionary. He started as a single-family developer. I know nobody can read these words. They're so small. But have evolved over the last 15 years into a mixed-use commercial and multifamily development company. We are 350 people in our company. We're scattered out throughout the country in 4 different offices. But we have all of these components in-house. We have financial, development, design, construction, and operations. And the company evolved that way over from one person to 350 in a very sort of deliberate way. And as we got into more complex projects, our ownership and leadership team started adding in components to the company so that we could really start to understand the development process from concept through financing, construction, and then management through the end. And so that's what each one of these groups within our company represents. It really represents how do we control and become a good, strong team through that whole development process, so that we're not relying on outside influences that may or may not have our interests aligned with. So we're based in Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. We have offices in Denver, Dallas, and New York, and each one of those offices is responsible for sourcing projects within their regions, both in the Southeast, Texas, Colorado, and to the west, and then in the Northeast. And all of the blue dots are our offices, and the red dots are all the active markets that we're in right now and looking for properties. As part of the design group, we test fit all of those. Our acquisitions groups bring us about 75 to 100 sites every year. And we test fit those sites to make sure that it's one, viable project, two, that it fits within the zoning codes within the municipalities that we're looking at, or if we have to go to get a rezoning, we're understanding that process. But really trying to make sure if it, one, fits our design goals, but more importantly, is able to be a viable project going forward. So 75 to 100 projects a year, that gets to be a lot of projects. We only really undertake about 10% of those. At the most every year is about 10%, 7 to 8 projects every year. Right now, and from the multifamily, bigger mixed-use projects, our projects last anywhere from 3 to 6 years long. From the time we start the process and really get investors lined up, get our financing in order, to the time we are fully stabilized, which means 93% leased on office, retail, and residential. That can be 3 to 6 years. So these are very long time frame projects. And right now we've got 11 projects going in 8 states in all different phases of construction. So that gives us a sort of a broad view of what's going on. These bigger trends that sometimes you read about in magazines, you might hear at a ULI convention. It gives us a broader view of what is going on sort of out there and the larger trends that we're seeing in both housing and where development is wanting to happen. The first one is really a renewed interest in walkable mixed-use locations. That people really are starting, and this is not all development. This is just some of the leading trends that we're seeing. There will still always be single-family development. There will still always be office development, but there has been a renewed interest in a more complicated, sort of human-friendly, walkable environment. We're seeing people being more active. We're seeing people wanting to be close to parks. We're seeing people wanting to walk more. We're seeing a real attraction to what is called a sense of place and real authenticity. Right outside of your front door is a great example of exactly that. People are attracted to people. People are attracted to well-done environments. People are attracted to a place they feel comfortable in. Some people that have heard me say that our owner says, "Take me to the place where you take your family or your friends when they come in town, and show me that place wherever we are." And that's what we want to be. That's where we want to be. That's the environment that we want to create, that people are naturally attracted to. And a lot of that has to do with scale, detailed design, and there are a lot of other factors that we'll get into. But then mobility is a big trend that we're seeing, that people want to be able to live in a place that they can either travel to or travel from very easily, that they don't have to worry about leaving a big house and the maintenance of a big house and a yard and everything else that goes along with it while they travel for a month as they get older. Or if they're younger, they want to have the mobility to change jobs and not be tied to a place with a mortgage and everything else that goes along with that, because they're attracted to different places, and the younger generations have a little bit of a different take on life, as you all might have heard and read about and experienced for yourself. And there's a big trend towards renting by choice, that you, instead of wanting a house, you would rather rent and have the chance to do all of the other things that preceded that. So when we're looking at all of the sites across the country, we boil this down to our site selection criteria. What helps us make a decision where we want to be? This sense of place, availability of transit, walk score, we'll get into that, and if there's a public-private partnership, there's a possibility of that public-private partnership. Sense of place, again, it's where you're attracted to. It's no coincidence that just about every one of those photos, there's more than 5 people. And because people are attracted to people. People are attracted, once a group happens to be there, if it's a nice place, if it's comfortable, more people are attracted to it. Just like out here. I've eaten dinner the last 2 nights. Outside there's a jazz concert. It just attracts people. They hear the noise and they want to be there. There's a sense of watching people that's a great thing. This is in 16th Street in Denver. It looks like that's like a photo montage, but there really were that many people there. And then transit availability. Is there a bike path? Is there a way for alternate transportation other than being in your car? Is there a bike? Is there a bus? Is there light rail? Is there a subway line? There are a lot of our projects that were in dense urban environments that are directly on a subway line. Walk score means how. It's a score, and I think it's walkscore.com or walkscore.org, but it scores every site in every city. And downtown Knoxville actually has a really high walk score, from 0 to 100, and that means, can you walk to the necessities and where you want to be? Can you actually walk there? Are the sidewalks in order? Is there a good mix of use? Can you go get your groceries? Can you get to a park? Can you get to your office? And that's a big deal for us. And then public-private partnerships. This is a public-private partnership that we're involved with in downtown Plano, Texas, where they really wanted more residential development and mixed-use development in their historic downtown to get more warm bodies there on a more regular basis. They had very successful restaurants, very little office, but they were very interested in helping us. And we actually, the site of this was an old parks building that they were using for parks, and I believe it was Public Works, that we took ownership of the site, demolished that building, they moved to another building, and then we were able to build this project. It's about 75% through construction right now. But it helps demonstrate to us the city's commitment to our shared goals in a mixed-use environment, and something that we together can put together. So zoning is, I know it's a hot topic around here, and zoning changes are happening throughout the country, and kind of in response to those trends that we talked about. That a lot of zoning codes were originally laid out to keep zones apart, to keep uses apart, to keep single family away from retail, away from office, away from industrial. There were a lot of good intentions there. That as the Industrial Revolution happened, as the housing boom happened after World War II, there was a lot of good thought in that mixing uses. There had been a sort of a degradation of that environment where you might have a smokestack next to an apartment building, and that's not good for anybody. And so now this sort of the pendulum is swinging back through the recognition that a mixed-use environment is not a bad thing. And so the allowance even of multiple uses in the same zone is a really important thing as a first step to allow a good mixed-use environment to happen. So again, this is the zoning map of my hometown, Franklin, where we're still segregating uses. All those colors are a separate use. Different densities of residential, if it's all residential, commercial, office. But in 2007, we started adding in mixed use, adding in the opportunity to do commercial in a residential district or residential in an office district that allows for a mixed use project to happen. So this is a good example of a horizontal mixed use. I have no idea where this was, but it's got a great mix of single family, apartments, townhomes, office, but they're all segregated. They're all horizontally mixed use, where there's a boundary line between what you can do and what you can't do in the horizontal way. What we're experiencing, what we're seeing across the country is a renewed interest in vertical mixed use, where we can have residential above retail, where we can have office above retail, where we can have, we're working on a couple of projects where there are 3 or 4 uses in the same building: hotel, office, residential, and retail. In the past, that's not been even legal to do without a lot of different exceptions and changes to zoning codes. And so we're seeing that as a trend happening across the country. And you might have heard the term form-based code. And land use in the past is a use-based code, meaning you can put this use here. Land use codes are evolving into what is known as a form-based code, meaning we care about what our environment looks like. We care about where your streets are, we care about how high your buildings can be, we care about your setbacks, we care about a good pedestrian realm, and we'll get to the uses too. But we want to make sure that you're building a really well done urban environment first, and then we'll figure out what the uses are. There's a big difference between a form-based code, which is really saying we want a good urban form, versus a use-based code, which is traditionally how zoning has happened. So I know you're going in the middle of this process, and there's a lot of healthy debate going on right now with your zoning code. Trying to figure out the right angle. Ellen, I might need your help. There we go. Some of you might have been to Franklin. This is downtown Franklin, Tennessee. It's a lot of buildings on the National Historic Register. This is, I like to say, this is how we used to do it before we lost our minds and before we really started implementing zoning codes that would disallow this kind of development. So ground floor retail, mixed use above, office residential, really nice walkable street. Another angle, downtown Franklin has been well taken care of. It was in complete disarray, disrepair in the mid 80s, and the great preservation group in town really has taken a long-term view and really done a great job of not only sparking this development, but really putting the support behind it to keep it viable for a very long time. This is a project in Cleveland, Ohio. There are many examples of new mixed-use development. This is called Crocker Park. Same basic form. It's not much of a difference between that form and that form. Street widths are about the same, sidewalk widths are about the same, separation between the buildings is about the same, but it's about 150 years worth of difference between construction. But the values are still the same. The values that people appreciate, scale, the detail, the nice urban environment where you might bump into somebody that you know, that still kind of remains the same. Different angle of the same project. So once we've selected a site, once we've figured out that we like a place to be, our goals start to get a little bit more fine detail. That we want to contribute to or make a place. We're attracted to those places that everybody else is attracted to, and we want to be a part of those communities. And how do we contribute to that? Or we have master plan communities that are up to 1,500 acres. How do we create something that's not even there? How do we make that place that people will be really attracted to? Again, public-private programming. This means just like the farmers market down here, that's public programming to us. Concert series, farmers market. How can we contribute to that, and how can we add to that programming, just to be able to be a good citizen and make it more of an attractive place. And private programming, we do a lot of our own events. We try to take care of our residents as much as we can. Integration into the community. Nobody wins if a development looks like a spaceship landed from outer space into a neighborhood. Nobody wins in that situation. And so we spend a lot of time working with the community, trying to understand their goals, and trying to understand not only from a regulatory perspective, but also from a neighborhood perspective. And then, as you might know, we're a for-profit company and we need to make money on our projects. And so we're trying to balance out all of those considerations to get what we want, deliver something that is what we feel is our legacy, and fit into the communities and still make our investors happy. That's why I'm going to do 5 or 6, 7 projects a year, because it's really good to put together. So what makes a great place? This is put out by a group called Project for Public Spaces, who we've worked with several times. They're experts at farmers markets, at concert series, at taking a blank slate and turning it into something. And they believe in a more temporary kind of world where they'll come in and do a temporary beach for a weekend in a downtown. It's amazing the stuff that they've done. And so they put together this sort of guidance to what does that mean. It's almost cliche. We were talking earlier today. Placemaking has almost become a cliche term, but it really boils down to how do you make places that people love, that are attracted to, and they don't know why they might be attracted to, but they just want to go there. And this is a little bit of guidance. We internally educate our developers or financial people so that they understand where, from a design standpoint, we're going. And we put together a book of our own, of our priorities. And one of this is required reading for a lot of people in our company. It's a book that was put out by the pioneer of understanding good urban design. His name is William White. He's an architect in New York. And it's a great guide for how to really create good space. So some examples: office, residential, retail, some of the examples of what we're trying to get to. Don't always all get there on every piece, but it's always our goal. And this is one of our prime examples. This is Larimer Square in Fort Worth. I'm sorry, it's Sundance Square in Fort Worth. It's a great attractor. It's a little bit of what you have here kind of on steroids, and it's a great place. Integration of the community really means working with our communities. This is in Charleston. This site is this little orange sort of triangle in the middle. And working in Charleston, it's a very sensitive place to develop, especially if you're an out-of-towner. The peninsula of Charleston's been around forever. The history and the detail. It is a world-class city. And so we have to be very sensitive and approach our development in a very sensitive way. And so we've been working at this for 18 months, met with the community groups probably at least 15 times. We've gone through our first couple of rounds of review. Before you can even go to the Planning Commission, they have a Board of Architectural Review that you have to get through. And they're very detail-oriented and very protective of their community and want to make sure that there's good quality development going on. And so a big part of being able to get through that process is understanding what the community wants and how to really integrate your development into the community. And so we tested multiple building forms to try to understand what would be the best way to fit into the community. And the far right slide is where we ended up. And it was from input from the community saying, our lots are only 40 feet wide. You're going to come in here with a project that's 200 feet long and try to integrate into our community. No, that's not going to work. So we started to break up the massing of our projects so that it sort of respond to some of the urban form within that neighborhood. And it really got us a long way to an understanding with the community. And we're still working through this. But that's just sort of one example of, we thought we knew what we were going to do, but we really had to learn from them what it is we needed to do. And so programming, this is one of our communities. This is West Haven and Franklin, where we put on event after event. We had a huge event that will attract 6,000 or 7,000 people this weekend, because we want to become a part of the community. These aren't just events for our residents. These are events that are open to the public. And we want people from outside of our communities to come in and hopefully one day buy a house or rent an apartment or shop at our shops. For us, it really helps to bring people in from outside the community. And then our multifamily communities, we do things like National Pet Day and free treats and free dog walks and that kind of thing. Just to really, not only are we accepting of pets, we were talking about today, dogs are the new kids for a lot of people, and so we really have to accommodate that. And we really have to not only say, well, here's a dog park, go at it. We have to say, we're happy that your pets are here because we're happy that you're here. And then from a charitable perspective, we put on races, we put on concerts, and try to involve the community that way as well. I'll run through a couple of projects. The first three are our projects, and the last one is one that I was involved in from from a very long time ago. First one is West Haven. It's west of downtown Franklin. It's a little over 1,500 acres. End up to be about 2,700 houses. There's about 200 to 250,000 square feet of commercial and mixed use in there, which is relatively small, but this is out in the middle of nowhere. And so we've had to wait for a good long while to let enough demand happen to be able to build our commercial in that area. So sort of a zoom in of the community. This is, as you can see, we're building out this way, we're building out this way. This is our elementary school, and this is our commercial core that really, we positioned it this way to funnel the traffic. There are 3 entrances and exits to West Haven, and funnel at least a third of it through the retail every day, just so everybody still knows that it's there and we get as much traffic as possible. But integration of open space, integration of amenities, and the elementary school is a really big deal. There's so many kids that are able to walk to school every day, and that's something that you just don't get everywhere. So some examples of the residential mix of, these are townhomes, these are single family, some of the trail network. We're gonna end up with close to 4 miles of trail, paved trail, and close to 4 miles of unpaved trail within our community, within our development. And that will connect to the city's overall trail network. Some of the open spaces. So this is the lake at the front, where we have canoe rental, paddle boat rental, stand-up paddle board. People are out there fishing, messing around all the time. And our commercial is just beyond that. We have 5 restaurants, a flower shop, postal store, dry goods, a yoga place. It's a really kind of diverse group of retailers that we have there. And they've done really well. And especially because we're adding 100, 125 houses a year, that gets to be more and more customers from their perspective. So some of the programming, that's not me, I promise. This is actually happening this weekend. It's called Porch Fest. People play music on front porches, and then at the end of the evening, everybody gathers for a big concert that ends up being that 5,000 or 6,000 people. Kind of shut down the community, except for fire access, which we learned last year. And people are just walking the streets and going from, and there's actually an app you can schedule yourself and it'll tell you where to be. So there are 75 or so acts that play during the day, and then in the evening they all come down to a large concert. And this is what's called the whiskey warmer, when it's really cold, do a whiskey tasting. This is a project in Boulder, Colorado. Boulder, again, is a world-class city. It's a place that is just not like any other. In some good ways, mostly good ways. But Pearl Street Mall is something that they developed years ago, where they shut down a street. It's retail, 2 blocks long. It's actually 2.5 blocks long. And all the retailers are on this street. It's basically what you have here. But it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And it's very attractive, very well done. So out Pearl Street is the project that we're working on, which was an underutilized office building and 1 new car lot and 1 used car lot. So zooming in a little bit, this is Google just did an expansion. This is their office building here. They're about to start another building here. This is an existing multifamily project, and this is known as their transit hub. This rail line will eventually, fingers crossed, be a rail connection to Denver. Right now they have a tremendous bus system. They have an inner loop, a middle loop, and an outer loop that is well used, and a network of multi-use trails. And you can kind of see, if you squint a little bit, you can see these trails going everywhere. And so we are a main connection that wasn't here in the past, and the city is really excited about finally being able to make this connection to start to create some of these, the loops that they've been needing for a long time. So this ends up being, this is a very complicated project. We have a an irrigation ditch that's owned by a farmers cooperative that's out east of town that they've been there before the town. And so we have to respect their rights above all. They say they came before the railroads, which is, they've been there for a very long time. And so the blue line kind of running through the middle of the project, but it's multifamily on one side with retail on the ground level, office on this side along 30th Street with retail on the ground level, and multifamily with some transition live-work units that are on that in that alley in between the two. And then all of the space there, the entrances to the parking garage are here. There's a parking garage under here, and we took it off to the side, and the entrance is here, and the parking garage is here. And so we're trying to take cars out of the whole environment. Ellen, can you see if that video will go? And we might watch about half of it. I wanted to kind of, you can see a plan, and I still don't fully understand it. So this is a quick video of how the project actually will look. So retail on the ground level, this is a shared street that people are walking on, so it's cars and bikes and people can be on it at any time. The sidewalks are wide enough that they have multi-use path designation, so you'll see bikes and people on there as well. It's all retail on the ground level. Transit stop here that we added. And then this is another shared street that goes into the project that kind of wraps the retail. But then there's a connection, a bikeway connection that goes under 30th right here that goes straight over to the Google campus. This is the office building. And as you can see, Boulder requires a very high level of finish. They required this hole in the building because they didn't want an office building over 200 feet long without a penetration into the project. So they require a lot of very high level finishes. And this is where we have this interface between the office and the residential, and there's some mixed use or live works underneath on the bottom side. So all of this ends up being public space that we're adding to the city. And that's something that the city of Boulder, we learned from the city of Boulder, is that they require you to demonstrate the community benefit of your development. And that we make money is not a community benefit. They require you to say, how are you making our community better? Not just that you have the right to develop here. You have to demonstrate how you're making our community better. And so that was, we're making the connections for the bikeway multi-use path, and we're allowing this whole thing to be open public space that we're really encouraging people that don't live there to come to every day, to come to work, to come to shop, and to even just experience the open space. Thank you, Alan. And so I think this is another shot, kind of again looking at that public open space and the Flatirons in the background. It really is a beautiful place. And this is Philadelphia. We have two projects going on in Philadelphia. One is on Rittenhouse Square, which Philadelphia, the original plat of Philadelphia included Rittenhouse, Logan, Washington. I always forget the last one. But 4 squares that sort of bound the downtown. 1, 2, 3, and 4. The fourth one turned into Logan Circle, which at the end of Logan Circle is the Rocky Steps. But this project is just out 30th Street, which is just over the Schuylkill River and out 30th Street. 30th Street Station, which is the main north-south Amtrak station, and a SEPTA line, which is their subway line, runs directly under our project. And while I know there probably won't be a high-rise like this built in Knoxville for maybe 10 years or so, maybe a little longer, this is relevant because I thought this was relevant to what is going on here, because there was a real desire by the master developer for us to come in and do residential. They were having trouble attracting the talent to this. It's called the Science Center. It's a joint venture between University of Penn and Drexel, and they were having real trouble attracting the talent of people that they wanted to start up companies in their community, because it was not a mixed-use environment. They were losing out to Mission Bay in San Francisco, and they were losing out to Cambridge Square in Boston, because those are really complete, good, livable environments that you just happen to work in as well. Here, this is what this environment, this is what our site looked like to begin with. This is some of the neighborhood flavor, if you call it that. Sort of very drab, very unfriendly from a residential standpoint. Very harsh. And so while they had done some streetscape improvements, they didn't have a good mix of use. And so they asked us to come in, and we looked at it. There was a real deficit of residential in the neighborhood. And since then, we did 363 units, and there have been 3 more projects in close proximity. So now there's going on 1,000 apartment units now, and there's a much more interesting environment, much more people on the streets, and much more it's much more attractive to the main goal of attracting incubator space and people willing to start a company that takes advantage of the research that's going on in those institutions. So some of the streetscape that we started implementing, giving shade, giving outdoor dining, just adding color, sorry it's out of focus, but adding color to the street to really help it become an interesting, more walkable environment. Since then, there's been some outdoor dining along that street. We had a contribution. I showed some art pieces in the earlier slides. Believe it or not, that thing in the middle is an art piece. So we contacted a digital artist that on the underside of our canopy, there's an LED display that is constantly changing. And it really gives some life to, as kind of a surprise, you walk under it. It really gives some life to that entrance in that area. The last project is 12 South in Nashville. And this is a project I was involved with on the design side back in the late 90s. And the city came in and implemented streetscape improvements before there was much investment, private investment, in this corridor. There's a lot of really nice housing stock on both sides, really nice old Craftsman, built in the 20s to 40s, really great neighborhood on both sides. But the retail and the commercial was very underutilized. So the city came in, and the firm that I worked with, we helped design the streetscape. And so that was back in early 2000s, and I'll show you a time lapse sort of between, this is 2007, which is the first Google Streets view, all the way up through now. So as it got started through 2007, not much happening, nothing changes really. Still nothing really changing. This is probably 2009. After that, you see the building in the middle start to get a new skin. It was actually a dentist office. He was the first sort of pioneer that came into the world. Next slide, you see the dentist office is pretty well done. But then this restaurant here on the right side is starting to come on. Next slide, and these are years apart. Next slide, they said, let's put some outdoor dining. Our entrance is on the front here, and let's start to try to make an active streetscape. So you can see there, that restaurant is up and running. There are people sitting outside. The next thing, this is one of the bigger changes. You see, this is between 2015 and 2016. Is the building in the background, the white building, went up. And then the next slide, the only change in the next slide is that the billboard goes away, which is something that the neighbors really wanted to do. The point of this is, and there's another vantage point, this is just up the street from that. There were 2 early pioneer, restaurant and beer garden on the right-hand side. They were there from the start. So the first couple of slides, there's some minor modifications to the beer garden. This restaurant, the name changed. They didn't make it. Second restaurant is in, so they're starting to spruce it up a little bit. Third slide, they had a sign out for brunch, so they're trying to get more and more business. But the beer garden added some green stuff over there. Fourth slide, this is from the same perspective, and that was about 3 years difference. The restaurant changed hands again, painted the outside to become much more bright and kind of airy. Has been there ever since. This is back in 2014 or 15. And the multifamily building happened in the background. See the difference? It's amazing that that's the same perspective. only 3 years away. And so they have residential above, 3 levels of residential above, and that's not one of our projects. It's actually a project of one of the developers that left our company to do this. But retail on the ground level. And then the last slide, this is updated just last month. Still basically the same, but everybody's starting to add some improvements. You can see that the facade of the beer garden has changed a little bit. And so I wanted to make sure that we weren't showing projects that just were in far-flung places that look big and shiny, that might not be achievable today for Knoxville, but this shows that there is some, if you keep at it, put the right zoning in place, show some commitment from the city that you want things to be different, better, that things will happen. Good things will happen in a way that starts to attract new investment that you're really wanting. And we're seeing as responding to the trends that we see across the country. So again, just kind of wrap up, we're seeing that renewed interest in those kinds of environments. We're seeing how zoning codes are being changed to facilitate that to happen, whereas in the past it was just not even legal to do. And then that, I think carefully and thoughtfully done development should show its benefit to the community, and that the community is not there just to solely benefit the development side. And so those are the things that, kind of from our perspective, those are our priorities, and those are the things that sort of guide our decisions on where we look for projects and ultimately the projects that we undertake, because those are significant commitments for any developer. That to start a project and to follow all the way through with it is a lot of hard effort and a lot of time, and potentially it could take 4 to 6 years worth of your life. And so at the end of it, we've just made the decision that we really want to be proud of the things that we've worked so hard on. So, any questions? I think that's it for me. So, yes, sir.
First of all, let's, and I'm sure there might be some questions, so raise your little hands.
So, did your company have any experience in turning malls into mixed use?
We were just talking about that. Did you plant that question? Did you tell him to ask that? We do not, but we are seeing it happen everywhere. And I was just mentioning that I read an article yesterday morning in Bloomberg that was sort of a look at how many malls are on the market, how many owners are wanting to sell, and how many can't sell because they think it's valued higher than the market is valued. They're trying to sell them for more than they're worth. And so this will be a longer term trend of repurposing those sites. And I don't know what that means. Bellevue Mall in Nashville is a good case study where there has been, basically it's shut down. The Titans use it for their interim practice facility for 3 or 4 years. But it's basically shut down from a retail standpoint and it's being repurposed. There's some multifamily, not us, but that's going into it. There are huge amounts of land, 125 acres in well-positioned places that are viable for something, but I don't think anybody really understands the economics of that yet. The example that I gave earlier, we're just starting to study, kind of on the flip side of that, we've been approached by a developer in Dallas that has an office park that's millions of square feet of office in your standard office park development kind of way. 125,000 square foot retail or office building with parking all around it. Repeat, 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 repeat. He's come to us because there's some significant development kind of all around him that's sort of blowing him out of the water, in a design way. And so they've come to us to say, is there any way that we can start to make a better environment? And we don't know yet, but it's a really interesting study. And those kind of things are happening all over the country. And so, specifically to answer your question, no, but there are some really interesting opportunities out there.
Yes?
So I work in communications for the city, and so we spend a lot of time talking about how we talk about these kinds of issues.
Yeah.
And we're seeing all the same kinds of demands you're talking about, but pushback too in different areas on different issues. And there were two things I wanted to ask you about. One is verticality. We're a very sprawling city. We're ranked one of the top 10 most sprawling metros in the country. People aren't used to anything over 2 stories. And as we go into some of our commercial corridors and start to encourage, especially with the rezoning that we're doing, more mixed use and especially more vertical development, people freak out. And we have people who live in a neighborhood who can't, a mile or 2 away from some proposed development. They certainly can't see it from their house. Driving past something that's taller than 3 stories scares them. And so I'm curious if you have any experience you're dealing, it looks like in larger metros where there's already more verticality, so you might not have run into that.
Well, no, but I would say that you can cast many issues of new development in sort of that same light, whether it's height, whether it's detail, whether it's a use, whether there are issues that come up with any new development. Specifically for height, and this is kind of why I wanted to start with how we think about projects and why we think about projects that way, and where we're naturally attracted to. Most people are very happy to get in their car and drive to downtown Knoxville to go to the farmer's market. You can't have really interesting, there's sort of the flip side of that each coin, you can't have really interesting stuff in a really well done way without the densities to support that. And so we kind of have to strike those balances, and that the way we counter that is to say, we point to examples that people appreciate and like that have been around for a long time. That's why downtowns are usually a great example of it. Downtown Franklin is a great example of it because it's not overwhelmingly high. The majority of it is 2 stories, but it's still a very complete environment, very well done, really interesting, attractive environment. And so it's a hard sell, and this is a long-term process. That's what we've seen, is that to go from your standard uses that are 1 story, spread out, parking lot in front of everything, you have to get in your car to go from one to the other. It's really, what we've been talking about is a reflection of the community's values. If you value getting in your car and driving from one to the other, and if you value that you don't care about walking up and down the street, then keep developing the way you are developing now. But if you see a different way, and if you see that you want to attract the people that are attracted to those spots, because not all development is for the people that live in town now. For Knoxville, for any place that we are, development is attracting other people from other places. And so those people are attracted to places that they've seen, that they love, and there's a reason they want to come to Knoxville. Is because there are a lot of great things going on there, and sometimes the built environment has to catch up to that. And so, again, I'm probably never going to answer anybody's question specifically with a yes or no or exactly what, but that how we approach it is more of, let me understand why you feel that way, and if you are attracted to other places, why isn't more of that kind of place not better? And is it better to have a gas station? We have one project that had 7 curb cuts on a very busy road. We've knocked it down to 2 curb cuts, and the sort of funnels the people in and out, and it's a much more pedestrian environment that you're walking in between. And we still had a lot of people really criticizing everything that we were doing while we're trying to help implement good urban design and good, complete kind of walkable streetscapes. So I don't think you're ever going to win over everybody, but sort of that incremental approach, eventually I think you get there.
One way to get there is you've got to raise their taxes if you don't keep growing. So the city's got to keep growing. And eventually you're going to go, quit growing out, people have to go up. It's the cheapest way to do it.
Good design instead
Well,
of
and
good design, I've
I think
seen.
the other way to get there is design.
It's
you know,
design,
because
that's exactly
all
right.
high rises are
That's
the
right.
same, and you can have some pretty ugly high rises, you know,
Boom.
they're just completely linear, but sometimes if you set them back and landscape them, so if you can show an example of that kind of vertical growth to the public, as
I
opposed
agree
to.
with that. I agree with that. And we focus a tremendous amount of attention on the first 2 levels of every building. because if you walk up and down the street, or if you're in your car, rarely do you experience anything above the third level. You know it's there, but from a distance you'll experience. But as you're walking down the street, if your world is really well detailed and really interesting, you know, where there's retail doors, there's nice design, it's wide enough to walk, all of those sort of simple basics, if all of that works really well, it's time well spent to detail that and pay really a lot of attention to make that public realm, that pedestrian realm work well. So it all works together for sure.
Any other questions or comments? I think probably that people who looked at the student housing there on the corner of Concord and Kingston Pike, it killed Vertical for many, many people, because it's the ugliest building that ever was.
And talk about out of context too, which I mean,
Yeah.
that building, right, that's the example of how not.
Well, and I think what I hear a lot of and what we see a lot of is that all of this discussion and what you expect of the built environment is that reflection of what your priorities are. I can't tell you what Knoxville's priorities are. I can tell you what we see and the trend, but it's really up to this group, it's up to your groups to express that in a way that says we expect development to happen in a way that works not just necessarily for one individual piece, or that works sort of in a way that excludes its environment. But if your priorities are that you want something that's more mixed use, walkable, a more complete environment, I think you have to put those mechanisms in place to express that.
Any others?
I got a statement. I think that is an excellent point, and I value the statement you made when you connect the community to the design element, and those are incorporated into your changes. But a lot of opportunities are missed when you don't incorporate the community and the recommendations that they make, and you go ahead and the design is poor.
Agreed.
Okay, I just need to say that, because we've been having that on
I will
multiple occasions
tell you
in the city.
I think everybody probably heard that statement.
Yes.
And in pretty well every place that we work, we cannot proceed until we have a good agreement with the community. We cannot be heard by the city council in Philadelphia, where the council member says, go and work it out with the community groups and then come back to me. Or if we didn't, in Boulder, if we don't go through the Board of Architectural Review and get a positive recommendation, then we can't proceed. Same thing in Charleston. So in a lot of communities, they put in place mechanisms that ensure that to happen. So agreed. That is a trend that we're seeing.
All right, if there are no other questions, we thank you again so much.
Thank you for this.